This is Scott Spratt from ProFootballFocus.com Fantasy, and this is another Fantasy Slam. Sunday was a really exciting day in fantasy for new quarterbacks, as two rookies and one sophomore quarterback took the field for the first time this season. The rookies were Blake Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater. Bortles ended up completing 29 of 37 for 253 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions versus San Diego, while Bridgewater completed 19 of 30 for 317 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, and added a rushing touchdown on the ground versus Atlanta. Keep that rushing performance there with a grain of salt, though, because the Falcons gave up 4 touchdowns on the ground on the day and 241 rushing yards. That's probably a case of a bad defense. In Bridgewater, neither he nor Bortles, in fact, will offer the rushing production on the ground that Johnny Manziel would if he ever got the nod in Cleveland. The third player was Mike Glennon, a sophomore down in Tampa Bay. He completed 21 of 42 for 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick versus Pittsburgh. So 3 fairly successful debuts, especially from a fantasy sense. The real thing of it this year is that, apart from Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning and a couple of other guys, there are a lot of quarterbacks falling in the middle of the pack. In fact, in standard scoring, 11 quarterbacks have scored between 14 and 17 points per game so far this season. And that includes guys like Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, who everyone expected to be elite options. Meanwhile, there are a couple of elite perceived options that have fallen even below the 14 points per game, like Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, Tony Romo, Tom Brady, and Cam Newton. So there's just a lot of guys there in the mix around the 8 to 22 range among quarterbacks. As such, I think all of the quarterback position has been somewhat devalued this year, unless you ended up with Peyton or Luck or one of those guys at the top. And that also means that guys like Bridgewater and Bortles can come in and be similarly productive immediately, which means you might be able to trade some of your quarterback depth away from people that aren't really recognizing that there's so much depth at the position. Among the new guys, I think I probably prefer Bridgewater over Bortles, and I definitely prefer both of those two over Glennon, who has a lot less job security for the season. Also keep an eye out for Kyle Orton, who was announced today would take the place of E.J. Manuel for the Bills. He was last seen predominantly in 2011 when he started 5 games for the Broncos, and his 0.40 fantasy points per dropback that year would have him in the range of an Alex Smith or even an E.J. Manuel this year. So Orton could be a productive player, and more importantly, could really improve the fantasy outlook for Sammy Watkins and some of their running backs. From Pro Football Focus, this is Scott Spratt.